About 40% of Hoosier students missed 10 or more school days last year. Nearly 1 in 5 were absent for at least 18 days. That's according to data the State Board of Education released this week. Student absences have been on the rise since the onset of the COVID pandemic. Although Indiana's latest numbers show slight improvements, absentee rates last school year were still 8% higher than before the pandemic. The highest chronic absenteeism rates came from the most vulnerable students, including those who were homeless, in foster care, or struggling with mental health issues.
I think this is really a rally cry for us to look at our parents, families, caregivers, and also our community leaders to come up with some solutions that might help.
We're joined now by Indiana Capitol Chronicle reporter Casey Smith for more on the state's report. Welcome to the show. Hi, Casey.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I gave a few numbers there, but how many kids are we really talking about that are chronically absent?
Yeah, so this new data is from the 2022-2023 academic year. That 1 in 5 number, about 20% of Hoosier students who were labeled chronically absent, that's equal to about 221,000 students. That 40% number, and that's of students who missed 10 or more days of school last school year, which labels them as habitually absent. That's over 400,000 Hoosier students of school-aged kids across the state.
Well, unsurprisingly, the most vulnerable students, of course, the ones that are most affected. Do you have any more on that? Any discrepancies, rural, urban, between race?
So based on these latest numbers, chronic absenteeism and just absenteeism in general, it is affecting schools across all Indiana geographies. It's not just the rural schools. It's not just the urban schools. It's not even just schools in more low-income areas. It's really across the state. That being said, like you mentioned, students who do face challenges like homelessness, students who are in foster care, they are much more likely to be recording higher numbers of days missed from school. But the same is said for students who come from low-income families, students who are dealing with mental health. There's also a hypothesis that's still being investigated by state officials that districts where there's a lack of transportation, school buses, that's also a contributing factor, not a sole factor, but that's causing absenteeism to be worse.
Yeah. So how do Indiana's numbers stack up nationally?
So there are numbers still being collected across all sorts of states, but from what we can tell so far, about 25% of students were labeled chronically absent last year. So again, chronically absent being missing 10% of the school days during the school year or more. That number has been rising since the pandemic. Indiana's number for 2022-23 was obviously a little bit below that mark, but not by much. Our neighboring states, they're also pretty high. Illinois and Ohio, they came in around 30% of students marked as chronically absent. Michigan was closer to 40%, Kentucky about 28%. A lot of states across the country, like I said, their numbers are continuing to go up. Indiana, a little bit below that national average, but still highly concerning.
So we just got about 30 seconds left, but what is the state doing to counteract chronic absenteeism?
There's not been much of a statewide response yet, but it looks like that's about to change. One of the big things that state officials talked about this week is a new dashboard to flag at-risk students to try and stop chronic absenteeism from happening before it does. We know that state leaders are also trying to rally up parents, community members to try and come up with different solutions to try to get parents more engaged with their students and making sure they're getting to school. There's also some talk right now, obviously, about the state legislature acting in the spring. We don't know what that could look like. One idea that's been proposed is harsher penalties and accountability for parents whose students aren't getting to school.
Casey, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.